Porsche may be rethinking its EV strategy right now, but for the time being, the Macan EV is a real thing, and it's available in multiple different trims.
Yeah, much like the regular Macan or the gas Macan, the EV does have multiple trims, 4 of them in fact. So we thought we would get the top-of-the-line Macan Turbo EV and put it against one of the more entry levels, the Macan 4 EV, and see what they drive like and if there's any reason to go ludicrous with your power or just slightly okay. So I guess we better hit the road and see what they're like.
We should probably switch cars though.
All right? I'll take 600 horsepower. Despite saying Macan on the back of the vehicle, this is not the same as the gasoline-powered Macans. This is a different platform, and it is about 2 inches longer than the regular gas-powered version, but that's not to say this is large. It's still well under 190 inches long, and the proportions and overall shape makes it still look pretty compact. And speaking of that shape, this is an SUV coupe in style, but Porsche is so good at nailing that stylistic genre. So many manufacturers, they just look weird and awkward, but in the Macan Electric here, it looks really good. Almost like one of the brand's sports cars just jacked up. Of course, that swoopy roof line leads to a very small area in the hatch, but it's still somewhat usable. Although when you get the turbo like this or the upgraded package in the 4, it gets the Bose audio system, which has a massive subwoofer that takes up quite a bit of trunk space.
Now up front, it has those Taycan-style squished LED headlights and enough air intakes to fool most people into thinking they're just looking at another internal combustion engine vehicle. I really like that the Macan 4 has those contrasting little strips on the lower door on the sides because it just makes it a little more visually interesting. The Turbo goes for a full monochrome look, even in the bright blue paint, by having those body color, and it has grayscale badges, which is, I guess, okay, if you're into that.
So keeping to the outside, this has a lot of the usual design cues, and it does look a little different than the Macan Gas, but it definitely resembles the Porsche family of vehicles. It has that single light bar across the rear hatch that pretty much every model now by Porsche has. And both vehicles have the optional 22-inch wheels wearing the same size tires. Porsche has never been one to shy away from exterior paint choices, and both of our Macans have plenty of choice, and you can even do a custom color if you're willing to pay. But you know what? I kind of like the shade of blue that the Turbo's in, and Kyle's a huge fan of the purple that the 4's in. Now, my interior on this vehicle as equipped is just black, whereas Kyle has the matching purple interior, and yes, you can make the ambient lighting green for the full Barney experience. And I must give some props to Porsche on resisting the urge to put any sort of fake exhaust finisher on this electric vehicle. In fact, I really like what the brand has done with the rear bumper on this Turbo model. It's a stylized diffuser of sorts, and it looks pretty cool. And speaking of bumpers, this Turbo's front bumper is different than the one on the Macan 4. So keeping to the inside, even though this is a fully electric vehicle, it easily resembles all the other Porsche SUVs. Anyone who's been in a modern Macan or modern Cayenne will have no trouble recognizing the inside here. This one, the Turbo specifically I'm driving, it has the dual screen, so the infotainment screen, and then a similar sized sort of duplicate in front of the passenger so they can look at different things on the screen than the driver has on the main one. The 4 we have doesn't have that option selected, so it just has a nice sort of finished portion there that looks like it could have a screen behind, but it doesn't. The fully digital dash is configurable, and it's pretty much like the regular Macans, although I do have some extra gauges for battery and recharge and all those sort of things you expect on an EV. The mostly touch panel down here in the center console for the climate controls and other features have a row of toggle switches, and then all of the actual touch surfaces, the entire screen gives you sort of a haptic feedback, much like a smartphone. There's actually good space in here as you can store stuff underneath the center console touchscreen, and then of course there's the cup holders and then more storage in the arm. Even though I do have a solid black interior, there is some nice contrasting metal look trim bits, and of course there's the ambient lighting that can be customized through many colors. And overall, it just has a elegant feel, and it does have a bit of a Porsche flair because I do have the Sport Chrono package, so I have my clock dead center. Like I mentioned, there isn't a lot of cargo space in here because of the shape. We're talking 17 cubic feet in the rear hatch, but there is 3 cubic feet in a frunk up front for a little bit extra storage.
I know Mike is going to talk to you about the interior experience in both of these vehicles, but I just need to point something out. Porsche's heated steering wheel is not great. I don't know when that changed because I remember it being pretty good, but right now it's tepid, lukewarm. It barely feels heated. And even then, I only feel it on the lower half of the rim. So that's disappointing.
As far as tech and features go, they're pretty similarly equipped, but I do have the 18-way power adjustable seat that includes massage and the adjustable side bolsters, both top and bottom, whereas Kyle has the 14-way adjustable seat that doesn't have those features. Both vehicles have heated and ventilated front seats and heated rear seats. There's a 4-zone climate control, and rear seat passengers get to control their own temperature levels, which is a nice little touch. They both have the panoramic moonroof and the power rear liftgate that also has remote controls to put down the rear seats within the rear hatch, which is always handy. One of the most interesting options on this vehicle, though, has to be the rear wiper. Yes, it is optional, and thankfully on this rainy day, it is installed on both the Turbo and the 4 we have in for test. And other things that are in this Turbo as equipped compared to the 4 includes the giant augmented reality head-up display, which is really cool and very huge and bright to see things, but I had to actually turn the augmented reality section off because when I was driving on the highway, it put a little exclamation point in an orange triangle on vehicles and obstacles, and I just found it very distracting. But in the city, I could see how useful it could be because it could highlight a cyclist or pedestrian jumping out before I personally see them on the road. So like I said, I have the fully digital driver information center, and there's a fully touch infotainment screen, and in this vehicle, a second one. And that screen and system, I'm not a huge fan of. What I did discover is it's very user dependent. And I mean, you need to have a user profile and take your time and set everything in it to make it work right. Since I'm in a different car every week, I'm logged in as a guest, and a lot of features and functions either wouldn't save for me or kept resetting, such as my presets. Every time I'd set some presets, next time I got in, they'd be gone. Now, if I had a profile, it would save them. And actually setting the presets wasn't too difficult, but it was more than just configuration. I also couldn't get my Apple CarPlay to work all the time, even though everything was set up. For the first 2 days, it just didn't want to connect. It kept saying it was trying to connect, but it wouldn't. And then on top of that, satellite radio, I'd say 3 times, wouldn't actually load, even though I was trying to load it. It was very strange, and Kyle didn't experience any of this in the other Macan, so I don't know if it's a setting that's set up or just this one was having some issues, but I did myself personally have a few connection issues with both CarPlay and the satellite radio. So let's talk some stats. Well, this is the Turbo, the top dog. So it's a twin motor all-wheel drive SUV. There's 576 horsepower between the two motors. That goes up to 630 horsepower on launch control. And there's 839 pound-feet of torque, which is a lot. Now, Porsche says it'll do 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds, and I don't doubt that at all. And it can go to 162 mile an hour top speed, which is actually pretty high for an EV, usually because of the way the whole single drive setup is, they don't go that fast, but this one does. So how hard does this thing launch? Well, like I said, even in crazy conditions like these, the 295 rear tires just hook up and go. It's unbelievable. It feels like I'm defying physics. I know this is probably where the weight actually comes as a benefit because it's not allowing those rear tires to break loose even in this torrid rain, so that's a plus. In the Turbo, on full charge and optimal conditions, I'll get about 288 miles of range in the Turbo, which is about 463 kilometers, and isn't great, but this is a 600 horsepower all-wheel drive SUV that weighs just under 5,400 pounds.
As tempting as it was to get the base model Macan, because we'd get to drive what is actually the first rear drive Macan, we're pretty confident this will be the best selling of the EV models because it is the most affordable dual motor setup. And yeah, that also means it's the least powerful. We're still talking 382 horsepower or 402 when you use the boost function. So This is plenty quick. It is carrying a lot more poundage than a regular gas Macan, but 0 to 62 miles per hour or 100 kilometers an hour is basically 5 seconds. And of course, all that power is available instantly. Now, while there are different power levels for all the Macan EVs, the battery pack is the same in all of them. So you're looking at a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's the gross figure. It's about 95 kilowatt hours of usable capacity. And so with this particular trim, it's a little over 300 miles of range, or 495 kilometers. Now, with all the variables working against us, like very unpredictable weather, a lot of highway mileage, these upgraded wheels, and the wide tires that are wrapped around them, this Macan EV is not hitting its quoted range. Now, when I'm not pushing the Macan EV and I'm just, going around town doing my normal thing, it looks like this would get pretty close based on its consumption figures to its quoted range, but that's just not going to happen today. I know what you're thinking. Does it still handle like a Porsche? Well, yes it does, largely. I mean, it also depends on what you mean by Porsche. Do you mean the vehicles that the brand sells the most of? The SUVs? Then yes. Sure, it is heavier, but when you're doing steady state, high speed cornering, this feels like a Macan. It has really predictable, easy handling with good weight to the steering wheel. I love Porsche steering wheels anyway because they're the right size and right shape. There's no flat bottom. And yeah, I have different drive modes if I really want to perk things up.
So how does the Macan Turbo electric drive? Well, I haven't fully decided. It is plenty quick, like plenty quick. And the giant tires hold on in corners way longer than they should, with 5,300 pounds plus on top of them. And the brakes, well, they're Porsche brakes, so you should pretty much have a good idea on just how quickly they can stop. So this is very capable, and the figures it puts down on paper fully support a high-end Porsche SUV. In fact, it could probably beat some of the brand's current models. But behind the wheel, it just doesn't feel as connected, maybe as special. I mean, the steering's good, especially for an EV, and like I said, there's plenty of power, but I don't know, it's just like there's a little bit of magic that's just missing. When we were going through some really tight, twisty roads, again, the tires just hang on. There's so much mechanical grip, and from behind the wheel, you can really feel what the vehicle's doing at all times, which is fantastic because not all electric vehicles give you that sort of feel. Those roads weren't exactly the best maintained, and going through some of the corners, you could feel where the vehicle was going to lose grip. You could feel the back end, both tires come loose for a bit, but you were confident in knowing when it was going to grab again, and you never felt like you weren't in control or the vehicle was going to get real upset due to these various road imperfections. And that's something Porsche's been doing for years, and even in this big, well, it's not big, but heavy-ish EV SUV, the brand still did it.
Now, living in a world that includes the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, the Macan EV doesn't have a whole lot of variation to its driving modes. Now, sure, I can switch over to Sport like this, and it just gets a little more eager. Everything feels a little more buttoned up, but you're not going to get a full transformation like you would in Hyundai's overgrown hot hatch. There's also the electric sounds that are suitably futuristic. It's a lot of worrying. I have it turned off right now for filming. I like it. I know some people really don't like these fake sounds, but I like that it leans in and takes advantage of the fact that this is a futuristic vehicle. There isn't a lot of regenerative braking in the Macan EV. Porsche doesn't really subscribe to the full one-pedal driving anyway. But if you are coming out of an ICE vehicle and getting into an EV for your first time, it feels very natural this way, so that's not all bad.
So my turbo tester has the optional rear wheel steering, which may seem a little excessive on a vehicle that isn't all that long or big. But you know what? I appreciate it. Around town on side streets, it just makes turning this vehicle so much easier. And in parking lots, it can do some crazy angles that you wouldn't expect even an SUV this small to be able to handle. So circling back on all this rambling, the vehicle is wholly capable. And you know what? For something fully electrified, it's pretty fun behind the wheel. But the fact is, I'd still rather get a regular Macan Turbo. Yeah, I'm going to give up a little bit of performance, but I'm going to save money and probably have more fun behind the wheel. Now, these are SUVs, so maybe fun behind the wheel isn't the most important criteria. And if you're looking for Porsche's top dog electric SUV, well, this is it.
Now let's talk pricing. This is the most affordable dual motor Macan, and it is $80,750 in the US, including destination, or $102,250 Canadian. That's a lot more. This one is actually pretty restrained in terms of options box checking. It only has about $14,000 worth of Canadian options, and almost half of that is just visual. The exterior paint, the interior color scheme, the big wheels, and the rear wiper. Options are slightly different between markets, so I can't give you an exact price for the US side, but yeah, it's pretty reasonable. And so in terms of final thoughts, that price really dictates how I feel about the Macan 4, because Mike and I agree that these vehicles are kind of targeting different audiences, and thus we have to give a verdict based on that. In the US, the Macan 4 makes a ton of sense. It's roughly the same price as something like a Macan S, and you're getting a similar amount of power, a little less range, admittedly, but an altogether more modern experience. It feels classy and futuristic, but it still feels like a proper Porsche. And you know what? Hot take. The Macan's gas engine has never been something worth writing home about. Any of them. So switching to an EV is fine. I don't think it's sacrilegious. The Canadian argument is a little tougher because there's a $20,000 gap between this and the Macan S. Macan S. Is this a more satisfying drive than the gas model? Yeah, I'd say so.
This thing is crazy capable. I just wish I was a little bit more connected.
But nonetheless, with that big price gap, you have to really want an EV to justify the Macan 4.